On my mom's birthday, a hidden family secret exploded that her own brother had stolen inheritance, but in court, the truth shocked us all. So last weekend was my mum Carol's birthday. She turned 41, and we decided to throw her a small but warm family party at my Aunt Linda's house. It wasn't anything over the top, just balloons, a few homemade dishes, a store-bought cake because Mom loves chocolate fudge, and family gathered around the dining table. Everything seemed fine at first. My uncle Tom cracked jokes, my cousin Melissa kept bringing out more food than anyone could eat, and Mom looked genuinely happy. She doesn't usually like being the centre of attention, but for once, she seemed at peace. Then the conversation shifted. I don't even remember exactly how it started, with Tom bragging about finally paying off his mortgage. Mom congratulated him, but then he made this offhand comment. Well, not everyone has to worry about money the way Carol does. At least some of us were smart enough for Dad's inheritance. The table went silent. My grandpa passed away a few years ago, and everyone knew he left behind some money, but it had always been a sore subject. Mom stiffened instantly, her fork halfway to her mouth. What do you mean by that? She asked, her voice tight. Tom smirked. Oh, come on, Carol, don't act like you don't know. We all got our shares except you. Guess you were too busy trusting people who didn't deserve it. I swear you could feel the air get sucked out of the room. My Aunt Linda gave him a sharp look and tried to change the subject, but Mom wouldn't let it slide. Why are you saying what I think you're saying? She pressed. That the money wasn't divided fairly? Melissa, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. Mom, maybe you should just tell her. It's not like it's going to stay hidden forever. My chest tightened. Hidden? Tell her. What the hell were they talking about? Mom set her fork down, slowly, her face pale. Tell me what? Linda sighed and rubbed her temples. Carol, Dad did leave you a share, but Tom handled most of the paperwork, and, well, it didn't exactly reach your account. The words hit like a slap. Mom's hand gripped the table so hard her knuckles went white. You mean to tell me my own brother took my inheritance? Tom leaned back in his chair, not even ashamed. You weren't in a place to manage money back then. You were struggling, making bad decisions. I figured it was safer with me, and besides, I used it to keep the family afloat. Don't act like it was just from me. I could feel my blood boiling. Mom just stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. That was my father's last gift to me. You had no right. The party atmosphere was dead. The cake sat untouched. All I could think was, this wasn't just about money, it was about betrayal, and the fact that everyone knew except my mom. The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mom pushed her chair back, the scrape of wood on tile making everyone flinch. You all knew? She asked, her voice breaking. She looked at Linda, then Melissa, then even at me. I shook my head fast. I had no clue. That the guilt on their faces said enough. Linda tried to reach for her hand. Carol, it wasn't like that. We thought it would just smooth itself over. Tom promised he'd make it right. Mom yanked her hand away. Make it right. It's been years. How could you let me sit here, struggling to pay rent, working double shifts, while you just stayed quiet? Tom finally stood up, towering over the table, his face red. Don't make me out to be the villain. You were drowning in debt. You'd have blown through the money in a year, at least with me. It kept the house and the family, Melissa's college, Mom's medical bills. None of that would have been possible without that inheritance. That was my choice to make. Mom shuddered. Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Dad trusted me. He wrote me into the will. Who gave you the right to write it? Melissa muttered. He's not wrong though, Aunt Carol. If he hadn't stepped in, we would have lost Grandma's house. You weren't exactly stable back then. That was the breaking point. Mom slammed her fist on the table so hard the plates rattled. Don't you dare use my lowest point as an excuse to rob me. I got back on my feet. I worked myself half to death to give my kid a normal life while you all pretended I just didn't matter. My chest was pounding so hard I thought I might burst. I blurted out before I could stop myself. So you all just watched her struggle while you sat on money that was hers. How do you sleep at night? Linda looked like she might cry. We thought we were protecting her. Protecting her. I spat. From what, having control over her own life, from maybe not having to work herself into the ground. That's not protecting, that's stealing. Tom's voice dropped, calm but cold. You don't understand the weight of family responsibility. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. I carried that burden. Burden? Mom repeated, almost laughing but with no humour at all. You carried it right into your bank account. The cake was still sitting there, candles and lit, and all I could think was how twisted it was. This was supposed to be Mom's night. Instead, it turned into a confession that shattered everything she thought she knew about her family. Finally, Mom whispered, You've all betrayed me. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat, and walked out of the house. I followed her into the cold night air, calling after her, but she just kept walking down the driveway. Behind us, the voices inside grew louder, Linda scolding Tom, Melissa trying to defend him, but none of it mattered. Mom's birthday was ruined, and so was any sense of trust she had left. I caught up with Mom at the end of the driveway. She was shaking, not just from the cold, but from sheer anger. Mom, wait. I grabbed her arm gently. She stopped, but she wouldn't look at me. I can't believe this, she whispered, her voice ragged. All those nights I cried, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, and they just let me. They let me suffer while sitting on what was mine. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I wrapped my arms around her, and she finally broke, sobbing into my shoulder. After a while, she pulled back and wiped her face with her sleeve. I'm not going back in there, not tonight. We sat in the car, silence heavy between us. Through the windshield, we could see shadows moving in the house, voices muffled but still heated. Finally, Linda came outside, her face pale in the porch light. Carol, please, she begged, walking toward us. Don't leave like this. We can talk about it, work it out. Mom rolled down the window just a crack. Work it out? After you lied to me for years? Linda's lip trembled. I didn't lie, I thought Tom would eventually give it back. That's the same as lying. Mom snapped, her eyes blazing. You kept me in the dark. That makes you just as guilty. I swear I've never seen Linda look so small. She glanced at me as if begging me to step in, but I just shook my head. I wasn't about to defend them. Tell me the truth, Linda, Mom said, her voice ice cold. How much was it? Linda froze. How much? Mom shouted, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Linda finally whispered, about 80,000. The air in the car vanished. I felt like I'd been punched. 80,000. That money could have changed everything for us: better housing, less stress, maybe even a chance for Mom to breathe for once in her life. Mom let out a bitter laugh, tears rolling down her face again. 80,000, and you let me beg for gas money, take out payday loans, bond jewelry, all while you sat there pretending to be my sister. Carol, please. No, Mom cut her off. You're not my sister anymore. You chose Tom. You chose his lies. Don't come near me again. She rolled up the window, turned the key in the ignition, and we drove off, leaving Linda standing in the driveway, crying into her hands. The ride home was silent except for Mom's heavy breathing. I wanted to ask her what she was going to do next, but I didn't dare. She looked like she was holding on by a thread. When we finally got home, she sank into the couch and stared at the wall. Then she whispered, almost to herself, I'm going to fight this legally. I don't care how long it takes. I want what's mine. And for the first time that night, I saw something new in her eyes, not just pain, but fire. The next morning, Mom was already at the kitchen table with her laptop open, paper scattered everywhere. I barely slept, but she clearly hadn't at all. She had the determined look, the same one she used to have when she worked 3 jobs at once just to keep us afloat. Mom, I asked, rubbing my eyes. She didn't look up. I'm filing for a copy of Grandpa's will. The county clerk should have it on record. If Tom forged or mishandled anything, it'll show. I sat down across from her. Are you sure you want to drag this into court? It's going to get ugly. She finally lifted her head, and her eyes were red, but her jaw was set. They already made it ugly. They stole from me, from you. I'm not letting them get away with it. Later that day, she called a lawyer. I could hear the conversation from the living room. Yes, my brother handled the estate. No, I never received my portion. Yes, I believe there was fraud involved. Her voice didn't shake once, but the fallout came fast. Linda started calling non-stop, leaving voicemails begging Mom not to escalate things. Melissa even texted me, saying, tell your mom to drop it before she ruins the family for good. I showed Mom the message, and she just shook her head. They're scared. That means I'm on the right track. A week later, we met with the lawyer, Mr. Daniels. He was an older man with silver hair and a calm voice, but his words were sharp. If what you're telling me is true, Carol, this isn't just a civil issue. It could be criminal, embezzlement, fraud, misappropriation of funds. We'll need documentation, but it's winnable. Hearing that made Mom sit a little straighter. For the first time in years, she wasn't the victim of her circumstances. She had a chance to fight back. But word got around fast. Tom showed up at our apartment 2 days later, pounding on the door until Mom finally opened it. I stood behind her, ready to step in. You're seriously going to drag me to court? He barked, his face twisted in anger. After everything I did for this family? Mom didn't flinch. You mean everything you did to this family? Tom jabbed a finger at her. You want to destroy me? Fine. But don't forget you'll destroy Linda, too, and Melissa. You'll tear this whole family apart. Mom's voice was steady. Now, Tom, you did that the moment you stole from me. He sneered. You think some lawyer's going to save you? Good luck proving anything. Then he stormed off, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Mom just stood there, staring at the closed door, her hands trembling slightly. But then she whispered, he's scared. That's good. That night, we sat together, going through every old letter, every scrap of paper from Grandpa. Each page felt like peeling back another layer of betrayal. And even though it was exhausting, I could see it in Mom's eyes. She wasn't backing down. Not this time. The weeks leading up to the court date were brutal. Mom and I practically lived in Mr. Daniels' office, drowning in boxes of old paperwork. He pulled records from the probate court, and sure enough, Grandpa's will clearly listed Mom as an equal beneficiary. There was no ambiguity. Her share was supposed to be deposited into her account, but it never was. Mr. Daniels leaned back in his chair, tapping the paper with his pen. Here it is, black and white. Your brother diverted the funds. The bank statements will show the trail. Mom's hand shook as she held the will. All this time, and they let me believe I was forgotten. But while we prepared, the family made their stance clear. Linda left a voicemail saying Mom was ruining everything. Melissa sent another text. Grandpa wouldn't have wanted this. You're being selfish. Selfish. That word made Mom furious. One night she slammed her phone on the counter and shouted, how dare they call me selfish when I was the one struggling to put food on the table while they spent my money on vacations and tuition. I tried to calm her down, but honestly, I was angry too. I remembered nights when we had ramen 3 times a week, when Mom cried because she couldn't afford Christmas presents. Knowing now that the money could have spared us all of that, it made me sick. The closer the court date got, the uglier the family got. One Saturday, Linda actually showed up at our apartment. Her makeup was smeared from crying, and she looked desperate. Carol, please, she begged at the door. Don't do this. If this goes public, Tom could face jail time. Melissa won't forgive you. Do you really want your niece to hate you? Mom's voice was steel. Melissa already made her choice. She stood by her father instead of me. If she hates me for standing up for myself, then so be it. Linda burst into tears, but Mom didn't waver. She just shut the door, leaned against it, and whispered, I've been silenced too long. The night before the hearing, Mom and I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by files. She looked exhausted, but there was a fire in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. You know, she said quietly, your grandfather always told me I was the strong one, that I had his stubborn streak. I think this is what he meant. I squeezed her hand. He'd be proud of you. The next morning, walking into that courthouse felt surreal. The smell of polished wood and the echo of footsteps made my stomach churn. Tom was already there with his lawyer, looking smug, like he thought he'd still find a way to wriggle out of it. But when Mom walked in, shoulders back, head high, I swear his smirk faltered for just a second. And that was the moment I knew we were ready. The courtroom was colder than I expected, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you feel small. Mom sat beside Mr. Daniels at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. I sat right behind her, close enough to whisper encouragement if she needed it. Across the aisle, Tom looked annoyingly confident in his crisp suit. Melissa sat behind him, arms folded, glaring at Mum like we were the ones who betrayed them. Linda wasn't there. I guess she couldn't stomach picking a side in public. When the judge walked in, everyone rose and my heart hammered in my chest. Mr. Daniels started strong, laying out the facts. Grandpa's will, Mom's rightful share, the missing funds. He presented the bank records showing large transfers into Tom's account shortly after Grandpa's death. Then Tom's lawyer stirred and tried to spin it. My client acted in the best interest of the family at the time. Carol was not in a stable financial situation. Tom ensured the funds were used responsibly for medical bills, household maintenance, education expenses. Mom's jaw clenched, but she stayed quiet. Then Mr. Daniels called her to the stand. I held my breath as she walked up, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore in. Mrs. Daniels began. Can you tell the court how you first learned about your missing inheritance? Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. At my birthday party, my brother made a comment that revealed he had kept my share of our father's inheritance. I'd been told there wasn't one for me. And what was your financial situation at that time? Mom's eyes welled up, but she didn't let tears fall. I was working 2 jobs, raising my child alone. I took out payday loans just to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, my family let me believe I was forgotten by my own father. They let me suffer. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of pen scratching. Then came the cross-examination. Tom's lawyer pounced, asking about Mom's debts, her struggles, her poor financial decisions. He tried to paint her as responsible, someone unworthy of the money. But Mom didn't flinch. Yes, I struggled. Yes, I made mistakes, but that doesn't mean my father's wishes should be ignored. That money wasn't a gift for Tom to decide how to use. It was my right. When Tom himself was called to the stand, I watched his confidence crack. Under questioning, he admitted to transferring the money for safekeeping. But when Daniels pressed him on why he never told Mom, his excuses started to crumble. Finally, Daniels dropped the bomb. Isn't it true that some of those funds were used not for family expenses, but for your personal investments, a new truck, a trip to Florida, a down payment on your boat? Tom stammered, face flushing. Melissa looked down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The judge's expression was unreadable, but in that moment, I knew Tom was cornered. And for the first time in years, Mom looked powerful. Tension in the courtroom was so thick you could feel it pressing on your chest. Tom fumbled through his answers, his lawyer trying to steer him back, but it was too late. The damage was done. Everyone in that room could see the truth. He hadn't been a noble protector of the family's money. He'd been a thief. When both sides finally rested, the judge leaned forward, his voice firm but calm. I've reviewed the will, the bank records, and the testimonies. It is clear to this court that Carol was entitled to an inheritance which she never received. It is equally clear that her brother, Thomas, diverted those funds without her knowledge or consent. That is a violation of both probate law and fiduciary duty. My heart raced as he continued. Therefore, I'm ordering that Carol be awarded restitution in the amount of $80,000, plus interest. Additionally, the matter of potential fraud will be referred to the district attorney for further review. The gavel struck, and just like that it was over. I glanced at Mom. She was frozen for a second, like her brain couldn't process the words. Then her shoulders slumped, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Relief, vindication, grief all tangled together. Tom exploded. He shouted, slamming his hands on the table. His lawyer tried to calm him, but he stormed out of the courtroom, Melissa chasing after him. People turned to stare, whispering as the door slammed behind them. Mom just sat there, shaking, until Mr. Daniels leaned over and said softly, "Congratulations, you won." Those words seemed to break the spell. She let out a shaky laugh, covering her mouth. I can't believe it, after all these years. When we walked out into the hallway, Linda was waiting. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying the whole time. She looked at Mom, then at me, and whispered, "I'm so sorry." Mom didn't yell, didn't curse, she just shook her head. "Sorry doesn't fix years of lies. Sorry doesn't give me back the life I could have had. You chose your side, Linda, and it wasn't me." Linda reached out, but Mom walked right past her, her heels clicking against the marble floor. For once, she wasn't carrying shame, she was carrying strength. Outside, the sun was shining, and the air felt lighter somehow. Mom tilted her face toward the sky and breathed deeply, like she'd been underwater for years and finally broke the surface. On the way home, she turned to me and said quietly, "It's not about the money anymore, it's about the fact that Dad's voice was heard, that they couldn't erase me from his legacy." I squeezed her hand. "You didn't just get justice, Mom. You showed them you won't be walked over again." And in that moment, even though the family was fractured and things would never be the same, I knew we'd come out stronger. That stolen inheritance had broken us once. But reclaiming her dignity made Mom unbreakable.